This is a message or a reply to a journal that I just read from Johnathan83X, known elsewhere as LaserX5, and on DeviantArt as Sonic7AMX93. You know, I can kind of understand where you're coming from, but there's a lot of things you have to look at, my friend. A lot of things you have to put into consideration when thinking about what you were talking about there. First of all, you say that the whole Sonic and Tails thing did not need to happen. That might be true, and you may have your own way of saying it, of how it should be done, and you might, and the way you kind of suggested might have been a better way. But let's take a look at this for a while. You call Ian Flynn a fanboy, and maybe he still is a fanboy at heart. But being a fanboy, he realizes what many fans had been waiting for a while, and I don't know if you know about this, but a lot of fans had always been wondering, if a fight would ever happen between Sonic and Tails, or who would win in a fight. So he gives them the next best option. He gives them Sonic and Tails. Because basically, let's face it, in the comics, up to that point, you have had Sonic and Knuckles, you've had Sonic and Shadow. Heck, I think that's about right. You've had Sonic and Knuckles, you've had Sonic and Shadow, you've had Sonic and Scourge. Heck, you've even had one of the most popular ones, even though it took place in Mecha Madness, in Sonic and Bunny. But yet, you never had anything that focused around Sonic and Tails. You never had some kind of conflict, some kind of fight. And when you think about this, it did start initially in the issue where Tails discovered Sonic and Fiona were together. So when you think about it that way, it's like, who wouldn't be upset, right? Who wouldn't have all this anger and frustration building up inside of them because of what they saw? Who wouldn't? Obviously, Tails would. And one can say you can't blame him for feeling that way. And you probably can't. And it's like I said before, and I'll say again. For months, this was building up and building up and building up. You could feel the tension kind of slowly building and coming to a boil. And then you really started getting hints that was happening when we hit with 170 at the end of 175 and going into 176, especially at the beginning of that. I mean, you could really feel the tension was boiling. And yet you didn't know why it was happening. You didn't know why it was happening. And finally, come 178 and 79, you finally find out what the reason is. Especially 179. Because let me try to quote what he said. He said to Tails that you're taking everything I've done to help you and you're throwing it away, or throwing it back in my face, or throwing it away. And this is Tails' reply, and I quote, "So you dated," and in tears, and you can go back and look at this, "So you dated Fiona to help me." Basically, that was his boiling point. Not just the situation with his parents and all, but finally, he just had it up to here, and finally just said why he was upset, what was bothering him. And you are right. Ian Flynn could have easily wrote where Sonic said, "Okay, buddy, what's wrong with you? I know something bothering you." But you got to realize other things were going around, so he probably didn't have other things were going on around them, so they probably didn't have enough time to do that. Now, I know you might argue that and say, well, they could have found time. They could have done a side story. That is true. They could have done a side story, but still, it's all about, in Ian's mind, fan service. Not just shock value, but fan service. Because as I said, it was mainly about the fact that we had yet to see Sonic versus Tails. Now, I know you might say, oh, yeah, we did see Sonic versus Tails back during the First World Tour in that dimensional situation. Yeah, but that was mind control. That wasn't real kind of dude. That wasn't really them. They were being controlled. Kind of get what I'm saying? So, again, you do bring up a good point, but there are others out there that will counter that and tell you that this had to happen. Not just because, as I said, one, we had not seen Sonic and Tails, in a real fight for a reason, but also the fact that this has been building up and building up and building up. And you might say, yeah, he kind of treated Ian wrote Sonic to treat Fiona like kind of tell Tails, oh, Fiona wasn't really that important. Like she was some kind of object and all that. I get where you're coming from with that, but let me explain something else. You see, Sonic dated Fiona because, one, Fiona, of course, as we all know, with behind the scenes, if you will, with 150, or after 150 or whatever, discovered that the Sonic in that issue wasn't really Sonic, but in fact, evil Sonic, who would later on become Scourge. So, the reason Fiona started to be attracted to Sonic and vice versa is because she was hoping to find that same attraction that she found in Scourge in the real Sonic. And the reason Sonic started dating her was so that Tails' feelings wouldn't get hurt. Now, I admit maybe that was a bonehead move to do that, but you got to remember, from a story perspective, if Sonic's dating Fiona, in his mind, perhaps, Tails will forget about it. I mean, they even had, and this was about a couple, I don't know how many issues before, maybe 5 issues before Ian came on board, they had Fiona literally explain in the story, whoever the writer was, I think it was Penders or somebody, explain, look, I think you're okay, kid, I think you're cute and all that, I really like you, but the problem is, and basically she put it like this, it's an age difference. She even explained to him that the Fiona he fell in love with was designed from when she was his age. She wasn't downgrading the fact that she doesn't find the kid attractive. It's just the age difference. And literally, that is why all of that took place. And again, I totally understand that you would rather have it done in a more simpler way, where Sonic is like, hey, buddy, what's up? I thought I'd, basically Sonic would find Tails somewhere like near the Ring Lake or something and say, hey, man, what's up? I know something's bothering you. Can I sit down and can you tell me what it is? I understand that's what you would rather have seen, but you got to remember, it wasn't shock value, although some like you may see it is, but it was mainly fan service because we had not seen Sonic and Tails, and we didn't have a reason to really see why it was going to happen. Now, you mentioned Knuckles and Urjack, and you gave Ian Flynn credit for this being one of his better stories. And it is, for a few issues, it is. But you got to realize, if you look at the story in a sense, Knuckles was kind of desperate to help his people, and the only way he could do that was probably do what he knew was wrong. Because Vitivius, if you will, basically said, hey, think of the one being that has enough power, if you will, to really be able to do what you want to do. That was basically it. He made him think of the being. And there you go. Again, true, it wasn't the best solution. It wasn't the best idea. Yeah, maybe. But it did crank out a good story, so you got to give it that. Logically, put yourself in the character's shoes. If you're in desperation mode, what are you going to do? You know, what other options will you have left to try to help your family or help your people? So, I know maybe from a logical story sense that it doesn't make sense, but in a sense it does. I know it kind of sounds weird there, but it does kind of make sense because he was desperate to do what he had to do. He just didn't know the doc's real intentions for this happening. Now, and of course you got to remember, he didn't trust him at first, but he kind of manipulated him into thinking, what being do you know of has the power to do this? And there you go. Now, as far as Sally and Monkey Kong go, I mean, how many times do I have to say this, man? Folks, how many times do I have to say this? Yes, they did kind of have what I call a flirtatious relationship. It was a flirtatious one where they flirted. And they were kind of having a thing going on, but it wasn't anything serious. Yeah, you can look at it in a panel of Journey to the East or Journey to the West, whatever it's called, and you see Sally using a pair of chopsticks to feed, I guess, some kind of a shrimp ball or whatever it is, rice ball to Monkey Kong and all that. I get it. I get that, but here's the thing. It's like I said countless times before, and I'll say it again. When I saw the hints of this happening, and it did, I said to myself that this was going to be nothing more, and this is true, was going to be nothing more than what we've seen in other kinds of media. My best example, again, is Saved by the Bell. You take a look at Saved by the Bell Hawaiian Vacation. Zach fell in love with the girl there, who was a girl there who worked at a rival hotel, and was for a little bit well, you kind of get the idea. Was basically supposedly going to be the fiance or the girlfriend of one of the antagonists, one of the villains. So you knew that wasn't going to be permanent because if it was just a movie, because it was a movie, right? What I'm trying to say is he fell in love with this girl and she fell in love vice versa, right? But did we ever see her again after the movie? No. And then you get another example. You get the Stacy character from when they did the summer episodes, the summer job episodes in Saved by the Bell. Zach fell in love with her. She went back east, back home, and we never saw her again. No mention. Mainly, the point I'm trying to make here, Johnathan83X, is the fact that Zach Morris fell in love with these two individual ladies and vice versa for the story arc, and that was it. There was no other mention of it. That was the whole point, and that was the thing with Sally and Monkey Kong. Yeah, it wasn't... Yeah, I mean, if you're a Sonic Sally fan and all that, sure, it doesn't make any sense. Well, it doesn't make any sense, but sure, you're not going to like it. And if you're a Sonic Gaming Show supporter, you're ecstatic about it. But you know it's only temporary. So, truth be told, what else are you going to do? Right? But again, you should realize that it was only for the story arc, and that was it. Just like the two I mentioned, just like the two examples I gave you. For Zach Moore's character in Saved by the Bell. The two ladies he was in love with in the Hawaiian Vacation movie and the Summer Job episodes were only for those arcs. And that was it. Because who did he end up... Because think about it this way. Who did he finally end up with in the end? Who did he finally end up with and at the end of all of it? Who? Exactly. The love interest he's had from the start. Kelly. That's who he fell in love with. That's who he ended up with.